moderated a chat group for teenage girls back in the 1990s. What was that like, and did it differ from what you see online these days?
Okay, so I was basically a fandom queen, and I wasn't just moderating various chat communities online, I was a teenage girl. So it was a self-moderated environment where we were producing artistic content and writing and making videos, but also the girls were obsessed with boys on these TV shows, as you expect. And so they'd have these huge wars every afternoon, and you'd wake up and there'd be bits of teenage girl everywhere, and then they get over it. Now we're seeing a more vicious cycle, I think, with a lot more nastiness arising in social media than what we used to have. I mean, before it was kind of fun, and now it's sinister.
Well, if it's getting worse, what do you think is driving it?
So I think the basic concept has changed what we expect out of society. So what society values is what we instill in our children. So when I was growing up, the online community was about creativity and about sharing a love of something that we were trying to support. And now we value victimhood, we value terror, we value alarmism, and this is what our kids are reflecting when they're online. They get kudos and likes and social engagement from either pretending to be victims or from monetizing fear. And it's no surprise that it has worn off on the section of society. It started with things like trigger warnings on Tumblr, and it's spread out into the mainstream education system, and it has thoroughly ruined an entire generation of children.
Yeah, we'll get back to victimhood in a second, but let's still talk about you. You've received quite a lot of hatred yourself online, haven't you?
Of course.
What sort of hatred have you received, and what did Twitter do about it?
Of course, being a conservative commentator online, I am the forefront. I get all the hatred, and so particularly during the Black Lives Matter rally in Antifa, when they were burning city streets to the ground in America, I would get death threats sent to my inbox of things like rape threats, murder, strangulation, thrown off buildings. This was all common. And you'd tell Twitter, hey, I think this might be a little bit, I don't know, dodgy. And they'd be like, nothing to see here, this is totally fine. But if I said anything critical about the normal social media stuff like climate change or anything like that, well then you'd get suspended for 12 hours at a time.
You have been suspended a few times, haven't you? Tell us about why, the most trivial times you've been suspended.
I've been suspended over so many absolutely ridiculous things, but the funniest time would have to be when I told Clover Moore to go and jump in the lake when she had one of these ridiculous statements about some light show. And apparently I was encouraging self-harm, which I think Twitter was making a pretty big leap to assume that Clover Moore couldn't swim.
Well, I need to ask you, why do you persist with Twitter? You're very active on it. Why go on it?
Whether we like it or not, Fred, social media companies like Twitter and Facebook have arisen as the new public forum. It is where ideas of society are growing, whether we engage with them or not. And so if we want to make sure that society's new conversations are going in a healthy direction, then we have to be part of them. And if conservatives and centrists ignore social media, then we are going to be governed by the most radical sections of our society. And because the politicians and the media, they listen to social media because they want the votes and the clicks. And so it's up to all of us to pay attention to what is going on there. So that's why I'm on there. I believe in the discussion.
Well, you're certainly taking one for the team. I mean, couldn't conservatives just stay off and leave them all to it?
That was the opinion taken by conservatives for the last 5 years. If we ignore the complete craziness of this alarmist youth, then that will go away. But the truth is, the only way to protect society against this acceleration towards madness is to drag their ideas out into the public forum and to challenge them and ridicule them so that they stop gaining traction, because they've been left to grow in the shadows of social media, and now they're in our parliament, they're in our politics. They become world policy in some cases, and that's because we ignored them. We thought they'd be safe there in social media, but it wasn't.